Welcome to Tramlines, a podcast from Agrii. I'm your host, Tony Smith, putting your questions to the experts. Today we ask, can a farmer have too much data? As on-farm challenges grow, how can data become vital to farm businesses? And what new tools are available? To help us explore these questions, we're joined by Ben Hatton from TELUS and Sam Fordham from RHIZA Digital. Let's start off by asking that question, well, to give us some context, what sources of data are we actually really referencing here and that we are going to focus on today? Sam, maybe you could start us off.
Yeah, I mean, we've done data podcasts before, Tony, and we sort of covered off that sort of basic farms on the ground data. So we talk about weather data, previous cropping data, soils, yield, that sort of thing. But really, we've covered that off and need to start looking at, okay, what other data are farmers currently required to keep, store, provide, and possibly what's more important is starting to look at what farmers might have to provide in the future, because we see that's changing, whether it's through some of the specialty crops that Agrii work with at the moment. So looking at fruit, salad, some of the veg produce, the reliance on the farmer from the processor, the end user, to provide quite a lot of information about that crop is growing. And we're now starting to see that sort of move into the more broadacre crops as the end market demands are changing.
Ben, what would you add in terms of the data that we're really referencing here?
I think there's some interesting new data sources that are coming around. I mean, we mentioned weather, and in the past we've seen imagery come in from satellites and other drones and scanning equipment. We're starting to see more business information start flowing in, prices, other sort of data packets that are available from other sources. There's still some commonality though in those sort of tried and tested bread and butter data sources. And a great example, talking to a farmer at the end of last week, and the age-old discussion around field boundaries and aligning those from the farm back to the office and how that can sort and organise the information. So I think we're seeing more of a broader context of where data is coming from and data sources that are available. Obviously, search engines are evolving, and artificial intelligence and how that can be used to sift through some of that data and optimize some of the results.
And maybe some farmers might be saying, well, yeah, great, that's fantastic. I'm going to have lots of data. But so what? Why is it so important, Sam?
The demand, as I said earlier, the demands of the end consumer are getting tighter around where a crop's come from, how a crop's been treated. I think probably, and Ben, please feel free to jump in at any point here, but it's a lot around justification of why something happened, and we're seeing that more and more coming from crops that were destined sort of direct into the food chain to more crops that go to processors. So that's now starting to get into broadacre arable. So there's that justification of, right, I did this to this crop and why I did that, and the proof of when that happened and how it happened. But there's also other pressures now starting to come on to farmers from other parts, such as there's still interest around the carbon footprint side. It hasn't gone away. It isn't quite the buzzword it was 2 years ago, but there is still that interest in how much carbon is taken to produce something. We're obviously seeing that reflected through some of the new taxing that cuts in, I think it's next year now, on importing carbon. So that means that carbon generated for produce domestically is going to be under scrutiny, because you'll be potentially pitching that against stuff that's been imported. And then the new one that's probably taking a bit more interest at the moment is around this biodiversity side. So not necessarily just looking at biodiversity net gain, because that's a whole other form of pressure that's coming onto landowners, but more around, are you growing this crop in a way that is protecting the environment as much as you can.
That's what that data can do. Is it crucial for the farm business to be embracing new sources of data, better ways of collecting it, the use of AI in a way that it can sort that information that you mentioned? How crucial is it for the farm business?
I think an awareness of new and emerging tools and data sources is sort of paramount. We see this in other industries and how that's evolving. It all comes back down to applying what's right for that particular farm business, though, and that's exactly the same with the information or data that's available. There will be a variety of different sources, sometimes different accuracies of that information, and that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be considered. And I don't think you can have too much data. I think potentially you could act on too much data or the wrong sort of information, but certainly having access to it and storing it in digital systems, making sure that it's truthed, making sure that it's accessible is paramount. And we've seen this with some of the software systems that we've provided over the years, where there's been a key need that's been identified by the farmer or the advisory service to have a digital system in place. And then we've seen that categorically time and time again, where customers have had a real good bank of information, and they've managed to store that, make it accurate, challenge it at times, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, a new use case comes along, and actually, because that information is available and it's reliable, and the farmer can access that in a quick and timely manner, all of a sudden, the use cases then become exponentially more, just by having that rich resource. Whether that started off as a keen need to address traceability or compliance on farm, but then actually trying to understand the profitability, cost analysis, or perhaps then entering into lending agreements or engagements with specific crop processors. Having that information then all of a sudden allows that farm to ineffectively market itself onto the sort of broader industry. It's about trying to have the right information, have some confidence in it, challenge yourself with it, make sure it's addressing the key needs today, but be broad-minded and open-minded enough to say, well, what could we be doing tomorrow?
How are you two working together? Where's the partnership in terms of where you're taking offers forward for growers?
Yeah, we've been working with TELUS and the companies that came before that for a huge amount of years. I guess what's changed for us is that moving into the digital world that we're all operating in, we need to make things easier and make the transfer of information slicker. And that's been challenging with some of the legacy platforms, both our side and TELUS's side. But with the new product they're coming out with, it's a new, fresh, modern, online, cloud-based product. It's got some really nice links that we can share with Contour. So go right back to the basics, even just removing the need to double enter data. It sounds so simple in this day and age, but in the agricultural world, it's quite common. And with the double entry of data, whilst you're taking time to do that and no one wants to do it, you're also then getting into the realms that mistakes can crop in. So it's very basics form, being able to share data from one platform to the other between farmer and advisor seamlessly without double entry of information, and cleaner data sets moving forward. You're all working off the same hymn sheet, so to speak. But take that to a step further. A big part of farmers' responsibility of record keeping for their cross compliance is to make sure that their records are accurate and is true to what happened in the field. And that can be done currently, but with a lot of growers, it then becomes at some point a paper trail, and then paper trail needs to be entered back onto computer at some point. With the tools that we will be able to link Contour with in the TCM platform, a big need for that manual record keeping will go.
For expert advice on digital farming and smart solutions, visit RHIZADigital.co.uk. And so, looking ahead, what's new when it comes to different technical techniques and ways of collecting data? Sam, there's been a lot of talk about Skippy Scout. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so Skippy Scout is a product of a company called DroneAg that Agrii have been working with for about 3 years now. Essentially, their bread and butter is looking at getting more out of drones in agriculture. So satellite imagery, but from a drone, so much higher resolution, and you can go pretty much when you want, as long as it's flyable weather. You haven't got to worry about cloud cover like satellites. Effectively now, seeding is something we're looking at, might be looking at fertilizers going forward, putting on spot applications of slug pellets. But I think the most exciting bit, essentially, working with DroneAg and the relevant authorities, we should be able to do automated flights. So linking this back round, why I've gone off on this tangent is we're talking about data and how important data is and being able to collect more of it and do more with it. If we want to go to the extremes of that, if we could get automated drone flights, so that's a drone in a nest, I think they call it, basically launch pad, and that can just take off and do a flight without a person being there, without being physically a person telling them to go and do it. We could be collecting data close to real time as possible to influence applications. Now, that sounds really interesting and exciting, but you need to be able to manage that. And there's no point in getting imagery of your farm every day if you don't have something that you can take that into and then get something tangible out the back of it, because it's just collecting information for the sake of it if you're not careful. And that's where software platforms will start coming into their own going forward. So yeah, a lot of useful stuff you can do with tools like TCM from TELUS or RHIZA Agri Contour. But the future is going to be a lot more automated, a lot less physical people out in a field doing something. So even looking at robotics and how cultivations and weeding and that sort of thing might come in the future, they're going to have to be managed by something, and that data is going to be fed into something, and then the decision out the back of it. And now we're really going another step forward and looking at the likes of, Ben mentioned it, AI. How do you take a huge amount of data and take a tangible output out the back of it? And that's artificial intelligence, that's AI.
And Ben, you mentioned how AI would figure more predominantly at the start of this podcast, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, really exciting. And I think, like Sam just mentioned, there are some sort of concerns around it. And quite right. I mean, I think this would apply to anything, whether it's a drone and the misuse of that tool, or crop protection products, or anything else like that, of course. So it's just at the moment quite early on. But to embrace it, I think, understand it, use it in the right way. I think it probably comes back to what we're talking about with data in its raw sense. Having data is one thing, understanding it and acting on it and using it in the right way is certainly key to all of it. So yeah, exciting, and that's the great thing about being under the umbrella of a large technology company, because you get to see the internal benefits of some of these tools, let alone what they could bring to our end customers. So yeah, excited to see how we deploy them.
Okay, I'm maybe a farmer that hasn't adopted all these sources of information. I might be thinking, I really don't want to be spending hours and hours looking at spreadsheets. But my question is, well, what questions can a farmer ask of themselves that might reveal the need to access data and how that data can help them? Sam, it's a big question. What questions would you suggest a farmer can ask of themselves as they drive along, cultivating, drilling, etc., that could be useful?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's something that we within the Agri business and RHIZA business are trying to help growers with. And it's, if I put my farmer's hat on now and look at my accounts at home, and things are looking a bit bleak at the moment. And for us to survive as a farming business, and we are a small family farm, for us to survive, something's got to change. And we've got good agronomist that does a great job for us. Well, because of my job, we're doing precision farming. I'm not sure Dad would do it if I wasn't doing the job I do, but we try and be smart with what we're doing with our products. But I think it's other areas of the business start looking at to make the difference up, because we're not getting very fat growing a crop of wheat at the moment. To be able to focus on that, other parts of the business and farming at the same time, I need to be using systems to do that. I can't mentally keep all that in my head at once, and I can't analyze things to find out where stuff's going wrong, if it is, or where I could be doing stuff better, where I could be pushing things harder. And that's not just growing a crop, that's some of the other businesses we've got in the farm business. So I need data to do all that, and I need systems to do that. And that's just me on a small farming business. You start ramping that up to medium to large farming businesses where they've got more information available, more potentially diversification of those businesses. You need better systems to help manage that.
Ben, what ideas do you have?
Again, I think it's about trying to make sure that farm business is as resilient as possible for the future. And I think actually, even if it's a small outfit, if we carry on from some of Sam's comments, would you want to look back on yourself in a few years' time and thought, yeah, actually, everything was in order. I did the best I could do. There's nothing else I needed to do to my record keeping or the data that was available to it. I think most people will always say, no, we need to drive this business forward and make sure it's future-proof for tomorrow. Now, that could be something that they understand, an opportunity, a contract, change of land, change of machines, whatever else it may be, or perhaps it's just an unknown. But what we do know is that change is always going on, and we see that this season more than most. So trying to make sure that the business is as resilient as possible and making the most of the opportunities relies on data and being open to it and developing that further. And it is like a marriage. Just because you've got data and information systems today, doesn't mean you should stop working on them. There's always room for improvement because it's a dynamic environment and a dynamic industry. So it's something that needs to be worked on and looked after. But the great news is all of these providers of tools are making the tools more intuitive, more accessible. So there's never been a better time to adopt, use the computer in your pocket, the technology from your agronomy provider or your tractor.
And so, as we always ask, as we get towards the end of a podcast, we ask for one top tip. And Ben, you're the first to go.
This is a good question, but I would say it doesn't come back to the computer. I would always advise the farmer sit down with a blank piece of paper and map out what good looks like for that farm, and then fit that back to data and technology and how that can support that opportunity that business sees.
Yeah, very good advice indeed. I like that. Sam, well, can you better that?
No, not really. He's kind of stole my thunder there. No, but seriously, in all seriousness, I think what Ben suggested is great. What do I want to achieve and how does this work? But just talk to people. There's industry experts like Ben, who that's their bread and butter. They know what they're talking about. They've got plenty of experience. Talk to your agronomist. They'll be using a system of some description. They'll have an opinion on it. Talk to your neighbours.
Thank you, Sam and Ben, for such an interesting discussion, understanding the value of data now and in the future for the farm business. Do stay tuned here on Tramlines, recent episodes live from Groundswell and AgriFocus, episodes featuring discussions on varieties, nutrition and more. If you have any questions for our experts that you would like answered, email them into info@agri.co.uk. That's it for this podcast, but do tune in again as we meet the experts throughout the season, exploring the many immediate and longer term questions for growers and farmers in the UK. See you next time.